All right. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this session. My name is Tyra Riedemann. I'm an admissions counselor at Gettysburg College. I want to congratulate you on being accepted as part of the class of 2026, the Gettysburg community. And thank you for joining this Eisenhower Institute session. I'm going to pass it off to Tracie Potts, who will begin formal introductions with our panelists.
Thank you, Tyra, and thank you everyone for joining us today. I am very excited for this conversation. Joining me, and you will hear a little bit more from them later, are Megan Clark. Megan is one of our current Eisenhower Institute students, and I had the pleasure of traveling with her this year, actually, on an EI travel experience. So hopefully she'll tell you a little bit more about that. And Logan Grubb, who is from the class of 21, is one of our successful graduates, and we hope to hear a little bit more about that and the importance of EI for you, both as an alumni now, but also as a partner of EI, and he'll tell us a little bit more about that. So I'm going to take just a few minutes to give you an overview of what the Eisenhower Institute is, because I believe that you've probably heard about EI and are wondering, well, what is it? What's involved? What do they do? The bottom line is the Eisenhower Institute is a public policy institute within a college. That's a rare combination. I have worked for the last 20 years in Washington, D.C., and there are lots of public policy institutes, but not as many that are embedded inside a college institution like ours. So this is unique. And we want to tell you a little bit about how this can enhance your education and how, as it says here, this can help you explore your passions outside the classroom, which is so very important, because while you are learning inside the classroom, it's really important to also get those extra, or as we call them, co-curricular experiences. So for us, it all starts with this guy. Former President Dwight D. Eisenhower. He is the legacy of the Institute. The Institute was started almost 40 years ago by his granddaughter, Susan, and you'll hear a little bit more about Susan later in the presentation. But President Eisenhower had a long history with Gettysburg and with Gettysburg College. When he was younger in the military, before he was president of the United States, he actually lived in a home right across the street from the college. And that home is now our office. He lived there with his wife and his young son. He bought a farm in Gettysburg, and it was sort of the little White House, or the older version of Camp David. He brought world leaders there. So a lot of big decisions were actually made and conversations had during his presidency in Gettysburg. And then after he retired, after his term was over as president, he served 2 terms, he came back to Gettysburg and back to that farm and spent a lot of time thinking about how he, as now a former national leader, could be involved civically. Civic engagement is a big part of what we do. And so this is the legacy that we are built on. Leadership, public service, and civil discourse, learning how to talk about difficult things in a non-difficult way. And Logan's going to tell us a little bit more about that, because that's a lot of the work that he does. So what the Institute does is co-curricular programming. We are different than your classes. So these are not classes. They're seminars and programs that you'll be involved in. They are not for academic credit, but boy, will they give you a huge advantage once you leave Gettysburg College in terms of getting some hands-on practical experience. We call that experiential learning, learning by experience, which means we're sending you out to do things in the areas that you're interested in, and then giving you an opportunity to reflect and then present and even come up with new ideas and new policies about how some of the biggest problems and challenges in our society can be addressed differently. Our focus is public policy, and that can range from anything to civil rights to the environment. We have a couple of programs that deal with environment and climate change. So there is something really sort of for everyone, I think, at the Institute. And again, we're going to hear from a couple of students who can tell us a little bit more about that. So to give you some structure, these are the programs that we are currently offering, but we're always looking to change and expand. And let me tell you why. The premise of the Eisenhower Institute is that we offer an approach to public policy that's different than many other places. So oftentimes you'll see an institute that says, we focus on foreign affairs, or this is an institute that focuses on health issues. We look at what is important in society at the time. So we may have a program on foreign policy, but next year we may have a program on healthcare. Obviously, that's been a big issue over the last couple of years. What's unique about our institute is not the particular issues, because issues change over time. There's some that we deal with a lot, but what's important changes over time. What's critical is how you approach doing something about that. And our approach is nonpartisan. Our approach is based on Eisenhower's middle way of bringing people together with very different thoughts and opinions, so that we can create good public policy that benefits our nation. So this is how we're structured. These 11 programs, some of them are semester-long programs, some are year-long programs. It depends on the amount of time that you have available. For example, if you're a freshman, you may be very interested in the Eisenhower Institute, but you're also new and you're trying to figure out, how do I balance classes? How do I have a life outside of my classes? How do I get my laundry done? All of those things that you have to figure out in your first year. So maybe this is not a good time for you to commit to a year-long program. Maybe you want to try one of our semester programs or a travel experience to get a sense of what the Eisenhower Institute offers. We have 2 offices in Gettysburg and in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. is a real opportunity for our college and for you as a student. We're only about 80 miles away. It's less than an hour and a half. I actually live between them, so I drive to Gettysburg and I drive to D.C. all the time. This is our nation's capital, where decisions, big policy decisions, are being made all the time. And so we want to give you that opportunity and that exposure to not only go and see these places, but also the important part is to engage with experts who are involved in policymaking. So our DC office will be critical to the programs that you'll experience as a student of the Eisenhower Institute. We do travel experiences. Megan's going to tell you hopefully a little bit more about the one that we did this year. And there is no cost for any of these programs, any of these travel experiences, because we are committed to equity. And we believe that when you come to the college, we want every student who is enrolled at Gettysburg College to have the advantage of these programs and access to these experts as part of EI. Speaking of the experts, here some of them are. Here they are. We have both professional experts, people who connect with us outside the college and bring their expertise to our students. We also have faculty experts who are part of the faculty, but also have other expertise, interest, and projects that they can offer outside the classroom. Susan Eisenhower, you will meet if you are part of the Eisenhower Institute. She does one of our most popular programs called Strategy and Leadership in Transformational Times. Susan is often quoted, obviously, because she's the granddaughter of the president, but Susan in her own right has developed a career of over 40 years of expertise in strategy and leadership, in national security and energy. She spent many years living in Russia. And so she has a lot to offer our students about looking at the big picture of developing policy. I won't go through all of them, but I do want to share with you that we have a number of people. Danny Seabright is the president of the U.S. UAE Business Council, and he is very interested in taking students to Dubai to learn firsthand what those relationships are like. Annie Morgan is a Gettysburg alum, and she's also a defense attorney for a high-value target, actually, down in Guantanamo Bay. She works for the Pentagon, and she also works with us at the Institute. Dr. Howard Ernst is a political science professor at the U.S. Naval Academy, and also very involved in environmental justice issues. Kevin Nealer is a principal with the Scowcroft Group and focuses on foreign policy and trade. So these are some of the people that you will have an opportunity to work very closely with as a student of the Eisenhower Institute. As I mentioned, we've also got several faculty experts, including the director of our Fielding Center. The Fielding Center within the Institute is a real gem. It focuses on presidential leadership study. These students, 8 seniors who are part of the Fielding Center, do a diplomacy lab project through the State Department every year. So they are actually doing research that is going to be used as information and research for the State Department. So it's a pretty high level project that they're working on. Others are in public policy. The 2 in the center here, Scott and Taisha Redden, lead our Inside Civil Rights program, which this year is looking at the urban experience. They went down to DC and did a case study of a particular neighborhood there. And then we have welcomed, and we'll be welcoming in the fall, Padaraja Selvaraj. Padaraja is a faculty member who focuses on labor relations, and he's going to work with our undergraduates on the future of work and over the next 3 years. So we have a diverse group of faculty experts, as you can see, in terms of their interests. And again, all of these experts are available to you, and they will be pulling you in to do some of their work with them. For example, Annie Dowds has used a lot of students to work with her on writing a book. And so many of our students have become co-authors as a result of being part of her seminar. Now, that's enough of me talking about the programs. What I think will be really interesting for you to hear is the student perspective. So I'd like to reintroduce Megan Clark, who was part of our environmental leadership program this year. And Megan, just tell us a little bit about why you got involved and what your experience was like and the travel experience. And of course, at the end, what you think you really gained being part of this program.
Yeah, definitely. So hello, everybody. My name is Megan Clark, and I am currently a junior here at Gettysburg College. I am an environmental studies major with a peace and justice studies minor. And being an environmental studies major kind of drew me to the environmental leadership program with Howard Ernst, who is really passionate about environmental justice. And that's also where my passion lays as well, in the environmental justice aspect of everything. So I joined the environmental leadership program, and it is a year-long program where we spend the fall semester meeting for about 2 hours every other Saturday. And the fall semester, we essentially worked on planning a group project together that was meant to pique all of our interests. And there was a group of, we were, I'm forgetting now exactly, but I believe there were 6 students, and we all got to express what we were interested in and where we would be interested in going for the research trip. And in the fall semester, we decided that we were really interested in continuing Howard Ernst's work on how segregation impacts coastal communities down in Florida, which is something you don't think about in Pennsylvania, where we don't really have beaches to begin with. But it is a huge problem in coastal communities, and historical segregation of cities leads to restricted beach access even today for people of color. And we ended up taking a trip to Jacksonville and Palm Beach County, Florida in the spring semester. So after we had everything planned out in the fall, we spent the spring semester planning for the trip, planning where we would go, who would we talk to, meals we would cook while we were there to save money. And everything is in fact covered by the Eisenhower Institute, like Tracie said. And it's hard to put into words how amazing the experience was, but we went to Florida during spring break, and we all had an opportunity to have our own research day where we really narrowed down a specific topic that we were the most interested in. And we were able to directly reach out to people and make connections to find out more research about our topic. And some of the things we did were visited, we spent one of the days walking down a 12-mile stretch of beach, noting access points how accessible they are to just the general public in terms of parking, in terms of payment for parking, and general things like that. And then we also had other days. The first day we were there, this really wonderful woman who had grown up there and experienced segregation for herself was willing to share her story with us. And we were able to, she welcomed us into her home, and we spent hours there talking and learning about her history of coming back to the beach that was once segregated and trying to make it a home and a paradise for these people who had no other place to go for fun at the time. And on top of just learning about the past, we were also able to talk to people about the present and just noting the privatization of different beach access points that inhibits people of color from having those same privileges that they had during segregation. And it was, in terms of the learning experience, I don't think you can get a more hands-on type of learning than I did on the trip. And as someone who has struggled in leadership positions before, it was a great way to kind of get more confidence about talking to not only your other academic peers at college, but as well as communicating with people in the real world and trying to solve real world issues and asking them what they want to see us do with this work that we're doing. And I think that's an experience that you can't really put a price on anyway. And there was a lot of learning experience in terms of being a leader. And I think for anybody who has any interest in the environment, any interest in human rights, it was the perfect combination of the two for this trip. And if you do struggle with coming out of your shell a little bit like I did, it's a great way to give yourself the push and just get out there and do some hands-on research. And I couldn't possibly recommend it more to anybody who would be interested.
Megan, thank you so much. So now you see why we asked Megan to join, because there is value in me explaining to you what we do, but there is nothing like hearing from a student perspective, the impact that has. I just want to underscore a couple of things that you said, Megan. You talked about, things as simple as planning the meals for the day. I mean, these are part of the leadership skills. So not only are we doing the substantive research, but we are interested, and I say this to my staff all the time, we are helping to prepare you for life. And so we want to make sure that your leadership includes self-efficacy, group dynamics, that you're able to work well with people, that you can organize projects, that you can bounce back when things are challenging sometimes. And so this is why these experiences, particularly the travel experiences, are designed so that students lead, not unsupported, never unsupported, always with guidance. But the idea is to give you opportunities to really show the leadership skills that you may already have or develop leadership skills, as Megan talked about. They recently completed a presentation of this trip, and you can see it on the Eisenhower Institute's YouTube page. We've also written a story about it on our website at eisenhowerinstitute.org. So if you want to find out a little bit more about what Megan was talking about, there are pictures there. There are links to some of the video and the original interviews that the students did as part of this research. One question I wanted to ask you, Megan, before we move on. Why did you decide to do this? I think that sometimes students may look at this and say, wow, this is great, but it seems like a lot of work for something where I'm not getting academic credit. I came to college to get a degree and to get academic credit. And so I think the challenge that maybe some students and maybe even some parents are wondering is, why would you invest all of this time in something that seems like it could be a little time consuming?
Well, I'm definitely not going to lie. It was a very time consuming class, and sometimes getting yourself up at 3 p.m. on a Saturday to go to class isn't the best way to get yourself out of your room. But at the same time, it was something that I've never seen before. When I was looking at colleges, I had never seen something such as the Eisenhower Institute. And I was just exploring the Gettysburg page one day, looking for more opportunities to get involved on campus. And I saw this program, and just seeing that these people were on the ground doing this work, and you have the opportunity to do work in your own interested area. And the fact that as a student, the no cost aspect of it really did draw me to it as well, because you want to get good opportunities that will help further your career, but at the same time, there are financial limitations to it. So just a combination of being able to get hands-on research while I'm still taking my classes, and just being able to dedicate myself to something that I'm truly interested in is something that made it worth it to do my classes on Saturday. And I actually looked forward to going, and you get to form a relationship with the people who you do this project with as well. And it's a great way to meet new people and make new friends. And just overall, while it was a big time commitment, definitely worth it for all those reasons.
Thank you, Megan. And so think about what Megan's conversation will be like with someone when she's seeking an internship or with a future employer. She'll be able to say, I led original student research with a small research team to help come up with new solutions for a public policy issue that has been, impacting people for decades. I did original work. I worked with an expert from the U.S. Naval Academy. He can give a recommendation of the skills that I attained and the work that I did. Our students are able to say that I've contributed to government public policy. For example, our fielding fellows who are working on the State Department lab. So there's some definite value and benefits of that. Thank you so much, Megan, and stick around because I'm sure there may be some questions for you. So besides the programs, the semester and year-long programs that we talked about in the fellowships, there are other ways to get involved in the Eisenhower Institute. So maybe you're thinking, I'm a first year, I'm really interested in this, but I really want to get on campus and get settled and get my feet wet. But this sounds really interesting. There are other things that take less of an initial commitment, but will give you some sense of the work that we do. We are always sponsoring speakers, lectures, panels, and other speakers across campus so that you can educate yourself and learn more about issues that may or may not be in the classroom, but things that you may find that you're quite passionate about. We partner with Logan's organization, and he'll talk about that later, on a series of conversations called Dialogue Across Difference. Because remember, one of the things I said is that at the Eisenhower Institute, we really focus on helping people understand how to have conversations about important public policy issues when they may disagree. I mean, pick one. You can talk about healthcare. You can talk about immigration. There are very different points of view on the environment. There are very different points of view on things like that. And we want to train students how to go out into the world and have these conversations in a civil manner. Campus Forum is something new that we've started. It is a student-led effort twice a month to have conversations about policy issues that students are most interested in. So for example, this past week, they've been talking about climate change. This is an area where students can set the agenda. We have a number of things that we do on campus, including this year, a civic engagement camp for high school students. So you guys are coming out of that, but you may want to mention to other students that we will be sponsoring this camp to give high school students some sense of why it's important to be civically engaged, along with the history of civic engagement. And we've actually got some, we do debates, we do a campus debate, we're sponsoring a statewide governor's debate this year. And so there are a number of ways that you can get involved beyond and in addition to the projects and the seminars that we offer at the Eisenhower Institute. So let's talk a little bit about Washington. One of the things we love to do is to put students on buses and bring them down to our Washington office. We have an office that's 1 block from the White House. It's a great location. We have round tables there. We have small seminars and lectures there as well. We do networking receptions in Washington. We've got one coming up next week, for example. So our goal is to help you make those important connections with people who can help you both discover what areas of public policy you might be interested in, or further your interest in those areas. We are starting a new Washington Summer Fellowship where interns can come and work with us over the summer. We provide housing for them, weekly public policy seminars, some field trips. So that's going to be exciting. And again, we really give you the opportunity to meet experts in areas in which you are interested. So then what happens after all of that, after EI, after Gettysburg College? You may not even be thinking that far, but we want to put some thoughts in the back of your mind. So Logan Grubb is going to tell us a little bit about your experience, and also tell us about the work that you're doing now. And I would love to know how your Gettysburg experience and how your EI experience helped supplement and contribute to what you're doing today.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Tracie, for the great introduction. And it's great to be here with you all this evening and to be, connected back to my alma mater. I know I'm less than a year out now, but it's great to be back and with you all this evening. So while I was at Gettysburg, I was an economics and public policy double major, and I had minors in political science and peace and justice studies. And one of the things that really drew me to Gettysburg was the Eisenhower Institute. To be able to be involved with these experts and to have the chance to connect with people who could open new doors for me or could help further interests that I had. And one of the things that I was involved in specifically with EI that Tracie mentioned earlier was the SALT program with Susan Eisenhower. And so that stands for Strategy and Leadership in Transformational Times. And to have the opportunity to be in a session with Susan Eisenhower was cool in and of itself. She would often say, okay, guys, we're in the vault now, so like we can say anything, and on a Friday evening, just have a chance to have a seminar with her, hear from experts that she's bringing in, and also to hear some of the, as she often would call them, war stories that she's bringing back. I mean, this person has had so much experience, and to be able to tap into that, and then on a seminar level, to be able to work with a group of people and prepare a project on environmental leadership, I think is what our topic was that year. And to be able to share out something at the end with folks who were able to provide helpful things to think about going forward was something that I continue to draw on in terms of the skills that I've learned there, strategy and leadership wise. But also I know that Susan is a continued resource for me. We've had coffee since I graduated, and we've been emailing back and forth. And so it's great to be able to have that continued connection. In terms of what EI has done for me coming out of Gettysburg, EI helped me get my first job. So when the pandemic first started, almost 2 years ago now, the Eisenhower Institute kind of pivoted fairly quickly and started to do these like lunchtime seminars, bringing in people to talk about a variety of issues. And one of the people that they brought in was a guy named Joe Bubman, who I'd never met before, with a program or an organization called Urban Rural Action. And I happened to be invited by Kevin, who's one of the other people who works at EI, to facilitate a conversation with Joe and one of my other colleagues, Shelby. And after the conversation, Joe reached out to me and said, hey, I'd love to get a chance to talk with you more and just kind of give you a sense of what my organization is about and what we do. And I'm coming up on 2 years now working with them. So I was able to work with the Urban Rural Action during my senior year. And then I've continued on in a full-time capacity since graduating, which has been pretty exciting to know coming out of school that I've had this connection. And it's also even cool to know that I am now partnering with EI and Gettysburg College to provide some programming. So one of the new things that Urban Rural Action has done with schools across the Mid-Atlantic, of which Gettysburg is provide opportunities for students to engage in, as Tracie said, dialogues across difference. And so what Urban Rural Action does is we help facilitate conversations with students from a variety of ideological, racial backgrounds, socioeconomic backgrounds, by providing them with a framework for constructive conversations and constructive dialogues. And then we facilitate a conversation. And so students will express interest in a variety of subjects. I've helped facilitate conversations on education. Most recently, we've done one on the crisis in Ukraine and what we think, the response, the appropriate response from the United States is, and to hear, what students have to share about that is great, but also to be able to provide them with a framework for how to engage constructively with their peers is even more valuable, because it's important to be able to engage with people, especially those who differ from you, because we're very much living in this American experiment together, and I think that college is a great place to be able to learn these skills so you can apply them, kind of once you've graduated. And there's skills very much so that continue to build on themselves. And even though I'm someone who I consider myself to understand the framework, I continue to find opportunities to practice, especially with my family. That's a great way, to think to myself, hey, am I actually practicing when I'm preaching, when I'm having a dialogue with my parents? And so that just gives you a kind of a brief example of what EI did for me, both at Gettysburg and then kind of moving on from there as well. It's been a continued system of support, and I'm glad to be able to be partnering and giving back to Gettysburg now.
Logan, thank you so much. I learned so much from your perspective as a former student of EI, former student of Gettysburg College, and now as a partner with Urban Rural Action. We love the work that we do with you, and I appreciate you taking time to share that today. So after EI, we want to provide some time for you to ask any questions or share any thoughts that you may have. I'm going to bring Tyra back in at this point. I think that you might be able to broker any questions that students may have, and we're happy to answer them.
Yes, so we actually have some pre-submitted questions that you all wanted to know. We are using the Q&A function through this webinar platform, so please feel free to submit questions right now. We'll filter through them, but I will throw the first question at you all. So what percentage of students across the Gettysburg College community would you say are involved in the Eisenhower Institute?
So that's a tricky question because we have different ways and different levels of involvement, but I'll tell you what I think will be useful. We have about 120 students, a little over that, who are involved in our semester and year-long programs. So that's obviously a tiny portion of the whole campus, but these are students who are involved, for example, in the program that Megan was in. But there's so many other ways to get involved in EI. For example, we just had a program, we had a speaker on campus. We had about 35 students who got together and had a great Q&A session. We had some of our students showed up and had dinner in advance with John Della Volpe, who is the director of polling at the Harvard Kennedy School. We had a program a little over a month ago on voting rights. We had a number of people who were engaged and involved in that, and not just showing up to hear speakers, but we had students who were speakers as part of that program, who presented as part of that program. So they are involved in EI. Logan talked about dialogues across difference. We've had a few dozen students in the fall, in the spring, and I think we may have one more coming up who have been involved in that. So these students may not travel with us, or they may not attend a speaker, but they're involved in these workshops that give them critical skills. We do lunch and learn. Last year we did it on Facebook. We're looking at whether to do that on some different platforms as well. But we have people who will just log in at lunch and learn about a different topic or something new. Sometimes we do those in person. We had a couple of them this year, including one with Susan that drew a number of people. We have our summer fellowships. So, all in all, I would say that there are probably several hundred students on campus who are involved in one way or another with our work.
Awesome. Thank you, Tracie. So another question that was asked before the session began was, how are the fellowships structured? So what is the process to become a fellow? And then what does programming look like throughout the year?
Gotcha. So currently we have 3 fellowships. The undergraduate fellowships and the fielding fellowships are for seniors. So you'll be here for a little while and you'll have some time to prepare for those. The applications for those are in the spring of your junior year. We actually just received those applications and are in the process of going through them and notifying those students. And these are small groups. These are 8 to 10 students who work together all year long during their senior year on a particular project. The Fielding Fellows work with Dr. Scott Bottery, the Fielding Center Director. They travel to presidential libraries. They work on that State Department Diplomacy Lab project that I mentioned. The undergraduate fellows work with a specific professor who rotates with us. He has an endowed chair who rotates with us over 3 years. So they have 3 years, or the professor, I should say, has 3 years to work with students on a particular issue. The one that's ending now focused on U.S.-China relations. The one that's starting over the next few years in the fall will focus on the future of work, which is relevant to all students because you're going to be there, as I'm sure Megan and Logan would tell you, before you could imagine it. Now we have a new fellowship, the Summer Fellowship, that is open to students of all years, so first years, sophomores, juniors, and we actually have some seniors who have applied this year, and we've allowed seniors who are graduating but still kind of trying to figure out what they're going to do over the summer to join us as well. So that opportunity is open for all years.
And this is maybe a question that anyone on the panel, any of our presenters can answer, but since the Eisenhower Institute is open to students of all class years and all majors, what is the benefit or value of participating in programming through EI for students who are not public policy or political science majors?
Yeah, that's.
I would love to answer that, but I would love to hear what Logan has to say first.
Yeah, thanks, Tracie. I think that's such a great question because I think when you first read, okay, Institute of Public Policy, you think, all right, it's exclusive to those students. But there's such a benefit in being a part of an interdisciplinary group of people, particularly if you're in a semester-long or a year-long program that is in kind of a seminar format where you're sharing ideas openly or you're all working on a common problem because you each can bring in different things to that situation, right? Like obviously there is a benefit to having a student who has experience in analyzing public policy. But if you're working on an issue that is related to, I don't know, housing, there's a benefit to having a student maybe who has experience in a sociology lens, or someone's bringing in experience from an environmental perspective, or a psychological perspective. There's such a benefit to that. And I think that's one of the great things about being involved is because all the experts who are there as well have a certain level of expertise, but are often supplementing their expertise with other people that they know, because they also recognize that there's benefit to being in an interdisciplinary setting. And I think that's something that extends not just beyond the Eisenhower Institute, but to Gettysburg as a whole, right? Being a liberal arts school, you are often going to engage in topics and subjects that are beyond maybe your interest or level of expertise. But I think it just makes you a stronger critical thinker and gives you different perspectives on different issues.
Awesome. Thank you, Logan.
Megan, I wonder if you might want to weigh in on that because we had a conversation about Megan's major and her choices of that and how being part of the Eisenhower Institute supplements what you're interested in.
Yeah, I think that no matter what aspect of or your education you want to go for, I think public policy is relevant for every major because all of those topics are so prevalent in our everyday lives. And like Logan was saying, that interdisciplinary approach can be really helpful because if you just have a bunch of people from the same background, you might have a lot of similarity in the ideas. But if you have people from lots of different departments, there's going to be ideas that you maybe never thought of because it's not your expertise. And I think it all just has value in the long run because everything shapes the way we run in society, and everything is important to ensuring that everyone has equal access to basic needs to live in.
And just briefly, we looked at these numbers this year. So just over half, 54% of our students are public policy and political science majors, and almost half are not. We have a lot of students in economics. We have students in environmental sciences. We have students in social sciences. I have a lot of music students who recently applied to attend our civil rights study trip because we're going to Memphis, which is a place that is known for its music, but also the impact of that music on social justice. So I think there's a home at EI for people who are very much outside of the political science space.
Okay, someone dropped in the Q&A chat that they were admitted as an Eisenhower Scholar and they want to know a little bit more about the program. So,
do you want to take that one, Tyra? Or do you want me to?
Yeah, so, well, I guess we could tag team it, but
Sure.
The Eisenhower Scholars program is, one, rewarding students who have applied for it, who have proven that or showed that they are civically engaged throughout their time in high school, right? And we like to continue that as they go on into their college years. And so it is a small cohort of students. And one of the main benefits is that you will have your own first-year seminar that is taught by Professor Annie Dowds and in our public policy department. And so that is geared all around civic engagement and leadership and action, right? And ways that you can make change, whether it be in your own local community or on a larger global scale. And so in that first year seminar, you will be choosing a topic of civic engagement that you're interested in, and you'll be making an action plan and a change-making project by the end of it. And you'll be coming up with ways that you can maybe continue on throughout your years at Gettysburg, enacting change and making actionable steps to kind of reach the goal that you would like. But there are also trips that will be given through the first year seminar program, as well as the opportunities to engage in some of our higher impact programs across campus. So engaging with our Garthwaite Leadership Center, as well as with our Center for Public Service, right? So our Center for Public Service, they are in touch with different local organizations within Adams County. And that is a large way in which our students are able to volunteer, connect the local community, give back. And so our Eisenhower Scholars will be able to join forces with CPS, as well as building their leadership skills, right? And figuring out what being a leader means to them as they go about trying to make change, whether it be in the local community or a larger global scale. Anything you'd like to add to that, Tracie?
I think you covered it. And I will just say that as Eisenhower Scholars, we welcome you into the Eisenhower Institute family. You are going to love that first year seminar with Annie Dowds. I hear students talk about it all the time. She is not only an amazing instructor, but an amazing leader in her own right. She also leads our Women in Leadership program, and students are very inspired by how she gives them agency and allows them to not only learn about leadership, but to practice leadership. And she's really big on connecting and helping students network. You mentioned the connections with the other organizations on campus. There is an orientation for Eisenhower Scholars, and so you will get a little bit of extra time up front before everybody shows up and swarms the dorm, so to speak, to bond and to really find out a little bit more about what that 4-year experience is going to be like for you.
Mm-hmm. All right, feel free to keep popping questions into the Q&A chat, but I do have one final pre-submitted question. So someone wanted to know, how much of a time commitment are the Eisenhower Institute programs, and how is a student able to balance that, their program with academic course load and social life on campus at the same time?
Megan, you addressed that a little bit, but maybe you could talk about the balancing with other things. And Logan, you experienced that as well.
Yeah, so as I mentioned briefly earlier, our environmental leadership program would meet. It was usually every other or every third Saturday from 3 to 5 p.m., which I didn't think was an inconvenient time or anything, because I feel like you get plenty of time to sleep in and do some things before you go and get taught, and then you have the whole rest of your night ahead of you. And as well as the trip, it was over spring break, so you do have to give up a portion of your spring break to do one of the travel programs. but I also feel like there's a lot of benefit to that, as we were visiting Florida, and while it wasn't a vacation or anything even remotely close to that, it was still just, you were having fun while also being educated. And because you're in an environment that you've grown to be comfortable in, it doesn't feel as much of a time commitment as you would think it is. But I'm not gonna lie, it does get difficult at certain times, but I feel like that's when it's appropriate to have communication with the people in charge of your program, because I worked with Howard Ernst, and he was more than accommodating if we were going through things or needed any extra time for any type of research. And similar to your professors, as long as you communicate that you're still interested, you still want to do research, you just need a little extra time, they will generally be flexible, because they know you're here for your 4 main classes, not the extra program.
Yeah, and I think the things that I would add are, you'll find at college in general, a list or an agenda is going to become your best friend, for just keeping yourself organized. And that's just a skill to kind of begin to get better at if you're not already, or kind of continue to hone those skills, because that will help you beyond college, certainly. I think one of the things that Megan was alluding to is the sense of camaraderie that you build through whatever program you're involved in. And so there is a level of excitement you have too, so my SALT programs were Fridays from 6 to 8, right? And so that's not always the thing that you think like, oh yeah, Friday evening, I'm going to go to this 2-hour like intense seminar. But once you have that initial first session, you're like, wow, this is super cool. I think there is a level of excitement that you have going into them. And you can also bring the things from the week with you, right? I mean, like your rest of your peers are going through the same things as well. And so people understand that, some weeks you're gonna have to lean on them, and other weeks you're gonna have to lean on you. And I think that the level of camaraderie that you build not only makes the program more exciting and impactful, but I think gives you a group of folks beyond the people that are in your major or the classes you're in or the activities or sports teams that you're in, that is also going to be people that you can rely on throughout, your time at school as well. And so that's what I would add is there's a balancing act that you definitely have to have, but there's so much benefit to being able to figure out how to do that.
Thank you, Logan. Well, we have time for one last question. So the last question is the research and programming more student-led or faculty-led throughout the Eisenhower Institute?
That's a really good question. So I think it depends on the program that you're in. Our aim is for the research to be student-led or largely student-supported. It kind of depends on the program, and it depends on the topic. For example, in the environmental leadership program that Megan was in at the beginning of the year, and I was new this year, by the way, at the beginning of the year, Howard came in and said, I've got these 4 ideas of projects that I'm going to present to students, and we're going to see what they think. And I looked at it and I said, oh, I know which one I'd really like to do, what I think is interesting. That's not the one that they chose. And that is perfectly fine, because the idea is for the students to drive the work and the engagement. And so I think that there are some programs that lend themselves to that a little bit more. There are some programs that lend themselves to that a little bit less. So for example, our undergraduate fellows, they have a theme for a 3-year period. But how they carry out that theme, those decisions will be made by students. Are we going to focus on for US-China, for example, are we going to focus on trade? Are we going to focus on business relations? Are we going to focus on technology? Who are the experts that we're going to bring in to meet with and to present to our campus in terms of panels? A lot of those decisions are made by students, and our goal is that as much as possible, those decisions will be made by students.
Well, I would like to thank all of our presenters, Tracie, Megan, Logan. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your evening to chat with us a little bit about the Eisenhower Institute and share your experiences. If you would be so kind to leave your email addresses in the chat box and make sure that you have it toggled on everyone. So that way, if students have questions they would like to reach out, they can feel free to do so. I'm also going to share screen and show you a QR code that you can feel free to scan with your phone, and that will lead you straight to our accepted student webpage. So that way you can see all of the upcoming events, both in person on campus and virtual events that we are doing throughout the rest of the month of April. And we are also on social media pages. So join the Gettysburg College Class of 2026 Facebook page. There are some introductions of your fellow peers who are on there, so get to know them. And we're also on Instagram, so feel free to follow us at Gettysburg College to see some Instagram live takeovers that students will be doing throughout the next upcoming weeks. And we have a Class of 2026 Spotify playlist. So if you have a favorite jam, a favorite song that you'd like to add to it, feel free to submit your song submission. I want to thank you all so much for joining us this evening and learning a little bit more about the Eisenhower Institute. And if you have any follow-up questions, you can feel free to email any of our presenters, as well as email the Eisenhower Institute and the admissions office. But thank you so much. And again, congratulations on your acceptance. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everyone. Congrats.
Thank you so much for
Congratulations.
listening.